For our next custom, I'll be doing another 52 Chevy truck. This is one of my favorite castings. The only thing I don't like about it is that it's missing an interior. We may be able to do something about that later. The story for this truck is pretty simple. It's been a farm truck for most of its life. At some point, somebody installed a homemade hoist and winch to use as a wrecker around the farm. Now, it's just begging to be brought back to life. As always, I'll start with a 9/64 drill bit to remove the pillar flange. Remove just enough to pry the chassis from the body. Sometimes, a little persuasion with a screwdriver never hurts. I'm going to start with the hardest part of the project first. I'll be using solder to make the homemade wrecker hoist. You've seen me use solder before in previous projects. I used it to make the custom light bar for the 2020 Jeep Gladiator. It's easy to work with, but it's somewhat fragile as well. You have to have some patience. I'll reinforce the solder hoist with regular steel wire to add some strength. The goal is to make this look very sketchy and homemade. I'll soak the chassis in bleach for about 10 minutes to remove as much chrome as possible. I'll also put the body in some citrus paint stripper to remove the factory paint. The hoist will need a winch. I'll be using even finer solder to build the winch. For the rollers of the winch, I'll be using the ends of B and C connectors. It's a pretty tedious piece to make. You can see how small it is compared to this dime. I think I've achieved the look that I was going for. I still need to add some feet and do a little sanding, but once primer is applied, it should really pop. The paint stripper did a good job removing the factory paint. I pulled this interior from my parts bin. I should be able to use some of it to create an interior for this truck. These are the wheels that I'll be using. They look more period correct for this truck. I need to cut some pads for the hoist. I'll use a thin piece of styrene for the pads. They don't have to be perfect. Nothing on this truck will be perfect. It should end up looking something like this. I'll remove the wheels that came on the truck since I won't be using them. I'll also be adding an interior to the truck. Even though the truck didn't come with an interior, and when all is said and done you probably won't be able to see the interior, I still want to install one. I'll be using a donor interior from another project. A little bit of cutting and a little bit of sanding should do the trick. I'll also modify the windshield casting just a bit to ensure a good fit. I'm very pleased with the results. It looks like it should have been there the whole time. I'll go ahead and give the chassis a coat of flat brown and the hoist a coat of gray primer. This casting has a lot of flashing, so I'll use my file to smooth things out a bit, and I'll also flatten the pillar flange for easier assembly. Removing this flashing will give the finished project a more realistic look. It's worth the time spent doing this. Once I'm satisfied with the body, I'll give it a light touch with the wire wheel, just to clean it up even more. Since it's so nice outside, I'll do the remainder of the cleaning outside. For this last step before painting, I'll give the body a good rinse in my ultrasonic cleaner. I'll let it cook for about 15 minutes. Be sure to take a few minutes and check out our pond renovation project that we started last year. Once the chassis is dry, I'll apply a light coat of red primer, let it sit for a while, then give it a heavier coat of espresso satin, and lastly, 2 coats of semi-gloss white. I'll then sit it aside for a couple of days to fully cure. If you aren't subscribed to our channel yet, please take a moment to do so. While the paint on the body is curing, I'll go ahead and start on the base. First, I'll rough up the plastic just a bit. This will give the glue something to adhere to. Next, I'll secure the plastic base to my working glass, then apply a liberal amount of white glue. Then I'll apply my mixture of sifted backyard dirt. After 30 minutes or so, I'll remove the tape. Be sure to get good coverage. Any excess will fall off and you can use it again later. Here's a little sneak peek of the truck. I almost hate to age the paint, it turned out really nice. I'll use some 3000 grit sandpaper to remove just a bit of the white paint. This will expose the brown layer just beneath. If you sand too much and expose bare metal, no problem, you can touch it up later. This can be a bit time-consuming, so you'll have to be patient. The end result is worth the time. It should end up looking something like this. If you don't think that you've exposed enough of the brown underlay, you can sand more. Remember though, there's still a lot of weathering left to do. I'll go ahead and paint the running boards black. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, there is still a lot of weathering to do. And now, just a light dusting of silver to make the grille stand out a bit. I guess it'd help if I kept it in frame. I'm sure you get the idea. I want this truck to have a homemade, beefy bumper. I was going to use this balsa wood, but ended up changing my mind. I'll still use the wood somewhere else. I think it's safe to go ahead and mount the body back to the chassis. I'll leave a link in the description of all tools and hardware that I use. Instead of using the balsa wood for the bumper, I'm going to use a piece of a plastic zip tie instead. I fashion a mount from a piece of a paper clip. I'll hold the mount in place with an alligator clip, then secure it with some super glue. This is where you can be as creative as you want. I'll use some brown paint to add rust to areas that the truck would be prone to rust. You may have to go over the areas a couple of times to add some depth and texture. Again, there is no right way or wrong way to do this. You can add as much or as little as you want. So far, I'm really pleased with how this one is coming together. With the new bumper completed and cured, I'll paint the back of the bumper a rusty brown color and I'll paint the front of the bumper a dull gray color. Now it's time to mount the bumper. I'll use a 1/8 bit to drill mounting holes into the grille. With the display base secured to my working glass again, I'll designate an area for taller, thicker grass. After a spritz of some isopropyl alcohol and some diluted white glue, I'll apply some 7mm static grass. And now I'll repeat the process and apply some fine turf. Again, apply as much as you want or as little as you want. After 30 minutes or so, be sure to remove the tape. It should end up looking something like this. I'll set it aside overnight to let it cure. While I let the base cure, I'll add some of the last painted detail to the truck. I'll give the tires a light brushing of dark gray to make them look aged. Lastly, I'll add some rust to the front bumper and hubcaps. And now one of my favorite steps. I'll use some pastel chalks to add another layer of detail. You can use as many colors as you want to achieve the look you're going for. I use them mainly for grime and another layer of rust. When I'm finished, I'll seal everything with a light dusting of matte clear. Once the matte clear was dried, I anchored the truck to the base and began to decide what else I wanted to add to the display. Sometimes when you're at this stage, you have to follow your gut, and this time, my gut was telling me to stop right here. It looks good just the way it is. So I stared at it for a few minutes and decided to go with my gut. I'm going to stop right here. I really am pleased with the way it looks, and it really doesn't need anything else to tell the story. Sometimes, less is better, and I believe that this is a good example of that. Again, I really hope that you enjoyed this addition to the video series. It was a neat little project, and I'm happy with the results. Please take a moment to give the video a thumbs up, share with your friends, and consider subscribing to our channel.